you're holding something small. Maybe you found it in a drawer, in an old jacket pocket, or tucked beneath a layer of forgotten receipts. It fits in your palm, barely weighs anything, and yet, there is something about this coin. It's nickel on the outside, aluminum bronze on the inside. Bimetallic. 2 metals, 1 coin. And right there in the center, a palm tree. A date palm, to be precise. Laden with fruit. Standing proud. Ancient looking, even. This is the 10 Israeli New Shekel coin. 10 shekels. And while you might think it's just pocket change, just a denomination, just a number, what you're actually holding is a story. A very, very long story. One that begins not decades ago, not centuries ago, but thousands of years back. Before the state of Israel existed. Before the modern Middle East took shape. Before empires rose and fell and rose again over that narrow strip of land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. So let's slow down. Let's look closely at this coin together. Because when you know what you're looking at, when you understand the symbols, the history, the weight of what this metal represents, a 10 shekel coin stops being ordinary. It becomes something else entirely. Before we talk about this specific coin, we need to go back. Way back. The word shekel, or in Hebrew, is one of the oldest words for money in recorded human history. It comes from the Semitic root meaning, to weigh. And that tells you everything about what money originally was. Not a coin. Not a symbol. A measurement of weight. In ancient times, in the lands of Canaan and Mesopotamia, what we might today broadly call the ancient Near East, commerce was conducted by weighing silver. If you wanted to buy grain, or pay a debt, or acquire land, you didn't hand someone a coin with a face on it. You placed silver on a scale. And the unit of that silver? The shekel. The Hebrew Bible, the Torah, the Old Testament, mentions the shekel hundreds of times. Abraham weighs out 400 shekels of silver to purchase the cave of Machpelah as a burial place for his wife Sarah. That's in Genesis, chapter 23. Roughly 3,500 years ago, give or take. In Exodus, the shekel becomes standardized. God instructs Moses on the weight and purity of the sacred shekel. It becomes not just a unit of commerce but a unit of offering, of census, of divine accounting. King Solomon's wealth is described in shekels. David buys the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite for 50 shekels of silver, the very site where the first temple would later be built. These weren't metaphors. These were transactions. These were real weights of metal passing between real human hands in a real ancient city. For centuries, the shekel existed as a weight standard, not a coin. But around 500 to 400 BCE, something changed. The ancient Israelites, and later the Maccabees, began minting actual coins stamped with the word shekel. And what was often depicted on those coins? A palm tree. We'll come back to that palm tree. Because it matters more than you might think. Take another look at that central image on your coin. That palm tree, the date palm, Phoenix dactylifera, is not just a decoration. It's one of the most layered symbols in the history of the ancient Near East. In the land of ancient Israel, the date palm was life itself. It provided shade in a scorched landscape. Its fruit, the date, was a primary food source, rich, caloric, storable. Its leaves were used for shelter, for weaving, for the celebration of Sukkot. Every part of the tree had a purpose. The ancient city of Jericho, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on earth, was called City of Palms in the Bible. Palm fronds were carried in procession by the Jewish people. When Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem, he decorated its walls with carved palm trees. The palm was holiness. The palm was abundance. The palm was the promised land made visible. But here's where it gets really interesting. When the Romans destroyed the Second Temple in 70 CE and crushed the Jewish revolt, they minted their own coins to celebrate the victory. These coins, the Judea Capta coins, depicted a weeping Jewish woman sitting beneath a palm tree. The Romans used the palm as a symbol of Judea, of the Jewish people. Even in defeat, they acknowledged what the palm meant. And then, starting in 66 CE and again in 132 CE, when the Jewish people rose up against Rome, in the Great Revolt and then in the Bar Kokhba revolt, they minted their own rebel coins. Silver and bronze. And what did they put on those coins? A palm tree. Not because someone told them to. Not because a committee decided. Because the palm tree was already the symbol of Jewish national identity. It had been for generations. These rebels, these fighters, struck palm trees onto their coins as an act of defiance. As a declaration, we are still here. This land is still ours. The tree still grows. 2,000 years later, the Israeli government designing currency for a reborn state reached back and found that same image. The palm tree on the 10 shekel coin is a direct, conscious echo of those ancient rebel coins. It's a bridge across millennia. That's not coincidence. That's civilization. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion stood in the Tel Aviv Museum and read aloud the Israeli Declaration of Independence. The State of Israel came into existence. A country that had existed in scripture, in memory, in longing, and in exile for 2,000 years suddenly had a flag, a government, and borders. It also, very quickly, needed money. The young state initially used the Palestine pound, a holdover from the British Mandate period. But having your own currency is a statement of sovereignty. It says to the world, we are real, we are permanent, we are a functioning nation with an economy and a future. In 1948, the Israeli pound, the lira, was introduced. It replaced the Palestine pound at a 1-to-1 rate. The lira served Israel through some of its most turbulent decades, the wars of 1948, 1956, 1967, the Yom Kippur War of 1973. Through mass immigration waves, through the building of cities, roads, hospitals, universities. But by the late 1970s and early 1980s, Israel faced an economic crisis that would reshape its monetary history. Inflation. Not ordinary inflation, hyperinflation. At its peak in 1984 and 1985, inflation in Israel was running at over 450% annually. Prices doubled in months. The lira, renamed the shekel in 1980 as a symbolic return to ancient roots, was losing value so fast that shopkeepers were changing price tags daily. In 1985, the Israeli government implemented the Israel Economic Stabilization Plan, one of the most dramatic and successful economic stabilizations in modern history. Within months, inflation was brought under control. And as part of that stabilization, a new currency was introduced. The new Israeli shekel, in Hebrew, ha-shekel ha-chadash. Abbreviated as NIS. One new shekel was worth 1,000 old shekels. The old shekels, inflated almost to worthlessness, were swept away. In their place came something clean, stable, new. The new Israeli shekel entered circulation on January 1, 1986, and it has remained the currency of Israel ever since. The 10 shekel coin you're holding exists because of that stabilization. It is, in a very real sense, born from crisis and survival, which, when you think about it, is a very Israeli story. Let's get technical for a moment, because the design of this coin is genuinely impressive, and the details reveal deliberate choices made by careful people. The 10 shekel coin is bimetallic. That distinctive look, silver ring on the outside, gold-colored center, is not two different metals in the obvious sense. The outer ring is made of nickel, and the inner disc is made of aluminum bronze. The combination serves practical purposes, it's harder to counterfeit, it's visually striking, and it signals value. Around the world, bimetallic coins are typically used for higher denomination coins, coins that matter. Think of the euro coins, the British pound coin, the Mexican peso. 10 shekels earns that treatment. The coin was introduced in 1995, and it has undergone subtle redesigns over the years, but its core imagery has remained consistent. On the reverse, the side you've been looking at, there is that palm tree. The image is based directly on ancient Jewish coins from the period of the Great Revolt against Rome, roughly 66 to 70 CE. These were the coins minted by Jewish rebels in Jerusalem during the 4-year siege that would eventually destroy the temple. The palm tree on those coins was flanked by the Hebrew letters spelling, Jerusalem the Holy. The designers of modern Israeli currency took that image and brought it forward through 2,000 years. Around the palm tree, you'll notice the dotted border and the text. The Hebrew text reads, Israel, at the top, and the denomination and year below. Look closely and you'll see the intricate craftsmanship of the outer ring, the reeded edge, the fine ridging that prevents clipping and aids the visually impaired in distinguishing denominations by touch. On the obverse, the other side, the design has evolved, but typically features the denomination prominently alongside a combination of Hebrew, Arabic, and English text. Israel is officially a bilingual state, Hebrew and Arabic, and this plurality is encoded into the coinage. The 3 languages on an Israeli coin represent not just practicality, but the complex, sometimes fractious identity of a state that contains multitudes. The coin weighs 7.7 grams. It is 23 millimeters in diameter, just under an inch. It is, physically, almost exactly the same dimensions as a 2-euro coin, which is part of why Israeli coins sometimes end up mistakenly used in European vending machines and toll booths, a small, amusing side note in the long story of this small, serious piece of metal. There's a quiet politics to the language on any national coin. Whose language appears? In what order? How large? These are not incidental choices. On Israeli coins, 3 scripts appear. Hebrew comes first. It is the primary official language of the state, the language of the Torah and of everyday Israeli life. It reads right to left, and its letters are among the oldest continuously used writing systems on earth. The Hebrew on your coin is a direct descendant of the script that scribes used to write the Dead Sea Scrolls. Arabic appears alongside Hebrew. For millions of Arab citizens of Israel, roughly 20% of the country's population, Arabic is their mother tongue, their heritage, their daily language. Its presence on the coinage is a legal requirement and a recognition of identity. When you see Arabic on an Israeli coin, you are seeing a statement, however contested in practice, that this state has room for more than one people, more than one language. English appears as well, a nod to the global language of commerce and diplomacy, and a practical concession to tourism, international trade, and Israel's deep historical and economic connections to the English-speaking world. 3 scripts. 3 communities. 1 small coin. Coins have always carried language because language carries authority. In the ancient world, the first thing a conquering empire would do was circulate its own coins with its own language. The Romans stamped Latin across the known world. The Persians used Aramaic. The Ottomans used Arabic script. When Israel chose to put Hebrew on its coins in 1948, and later, when the new shekel was introduced in 1986, it was making a declaration across time. We have survived. Our language has survived. It is here, on metal, in your hand, in your pocket, in the market. That is remarkable. Hebrew is one of the only languages in history to have been revived, brought back from a primarily liturgical language to a fully spoken, lived, everyday language. There are people alive today whose grandparents were among the first generation to speak Hebrew as a native tongue in daily life. The coins in those grandparents' pockets bore the same letters. So what can you do with 10 shekels? What does it mean in the day-to-day life of someone living in Israel? A 10 shekel coin is, by Israeli standards, a meaningful denomination. It's not pocket lint. It is roughly equivalent to $2 to $3 US, depending on exchange rates, and in the Tel Aviv market or a Jerusalem corner store, it can buy you a decent falafel, a cold drink, a newspaper. At bus stations and train platforms across Israel, 10 shekels will get you partway through a journey. In the open-air markets, the shuks, 10 shekels passed between hands hundreds of times a day, buying herbs, spices, olives, pita, fabric, trinkets. It is the currency of the everyday. The currency of normal life. In a country that has known so much abnormality, wars, terrorism, economic crises, mass immigration, geopolitical isolation, there is something quietly extraordinary about normalcy. The woman buying tomatoes in the Mahani Yehuda market in Jerusalem, handing over a 10-shekel coin and getting change back, she is doing something utterly ordinary. And that ordinariness, in context, is extraordinary. Israel has one of the most sophisticated and stable economies in the Middle East. It is sometimes called the startup nation for its remarkable concentration of technology companies, venture capital, and innovation. The Israeli economy produces everything from drip irrigation systems to cybersecurity software to pharmaceutical breakthroughs to cutting-edge military technology. The new Israeli shekel, since the stabilization of 1985, has become one of the stronger currencies in the region. It is freely convertible, traded on global currency markets, and held in foreign reserves by central banks around the world. That 10-shekel coin in your hand represents an economy, and a people, that has, against sometimes extraordinary odds, built something durable. There is a field called Numismatics, the study of coins and currency. Numismatists are part historian, part archaeologist, part detective. And what they will tell you is this: coins are among the most durable, reliable witnesses to history we have. Paper burns. Wood rots. Cloth disintegrates. But coins? Coins last. They survive fires, floods, burial, millennia underground. They turn up in the most unlikely places: Roman coins found in Ireland, Byzantine coins found in India, ancient Jewish coins found in caves in the Judean desert. In 2023, Israeli archaeologists announced the discovery of a cache of coins in Jerusalem dating to the Bar Kokhba revolt of 132 to 135 CE. These coins, silver tetradrachms, minted by Jewish rebels during the last major Jewish uprising against Rome, bore palm trees and halutzat, the lulav, the palm frond, on their faces. The rebels overstruck these coins on top of existing Roman coins. They literally hammered the Roman image flat and put their own symbols on top. Palm trees on top of imperial eagles. An act of defiance frozen in metal. Coins like that are found, studied, catalogued, and displayed in museums: the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, the Eretz Israel Museum in Tel Aviv, the Rockefeller Archaeological Museum. Schoolchildren come and stand in front of glass cases and look at those ancient coins, and then they reach into their pockets and pull out a 10-shekel coin, and a thoughtful teacher points out the palm tree on both. The line between past and present becomes suddenly, vividly thin. Your 10-shekel coin is not yet ancient. It was minted recently, in living memory, by machines in a modern mint. But it participates in a chain of objects, coin following coin, that stretches back to the Maccabees, to King David, to the moment when some ancient merchant in an ancient city placed a weighed piece of silver on a scale and sealed a deal. We started with a coin in a palm. We end there too. 10 Israeli New Shekels. 7.7 grams. 23 millimeters across. Nickel and aluminum bronze. A palm tree in the center, Hebrew script around the edge. A denomination. A denomination that carries, in its design, the memory of ancient rebels who died 2,000 years ago. That carries the word, shekel, spoken by Abraham, by Moses, by merchants and priests and soldiers and farmers across the entire sweep of recorded history. That carries 3 languages, 3 communities, 1 state. That carries the story of economic collapse and renewal. That carries the ordinary weight of daily life in a country that has never had the luxury of taking daily life for granted. Coins are small. That's the point. They're meant to be small, to pass easily between hands, to slip into pockets, to accumulate in jars on shelves and at the bottom of bags. Their smallness is functional. But smallness is not the same as insignificance. The next time you hold a coin, any coin, try to see it the way a numismatist sees it. Try to read what's actually there. The symbols. The language. The year. The weight. Try to imagine the hands it's passed through, the transactions it's witnessed, the pockets and purses and market stalls it's traveled through in its short, metallic life. And if that coin happens to be a 10-shekel coin, if it happens to carry that palm tree, that ancient stubborn image, then hold it a little longer. Because you're holding more than metal. You're holding memory.